Imagine this. You're in a relationship. You have a person, plans, inside jokes, shared history. If someone looked at your life from the outside, they'd say, "Oh, that looks nice." And yet somehow you keep feeling like you're the one quietly carrying the relationship on your back, while smiling. Because nothing is technically wrong. They're not toxic, they're not cold, they didn't do the thing. So every time your chest tightens when their message pops up, you immediately negotiate with yourself. Relax, you're overthinking. Be normal. This video is about that quiet mismatch, the kind that doesn't break relationships, but slowly rearranges you inside them. Where you're not suffering, you're compensating. And the scariest part is how normal it starts to feel. And if you're listening to this and already smiling a little, thinking, "Oh no, this is uncomfortably accurate," stay with me. Because once you see this pattern clearly, you can't unsee it, and that's actually a relief. Here's the thing no one tells you. Unbalanced relationships rarely feel painful at first. They feel subtle, they feel confusing. They feel like you're constantly making tiny adjustments without remembering when you agreed to do that. Nothing hurts enough to leave, but nothing feels solid enough to relax. Most people imagine imbalance as something obvious. One person doesn't care, the other one gives everything. But real imbalance is sneakier. It looks mutual on the surface. You both show up, you both talk, you both try. But somehow, you're the one carrying the emotional rhythm. You notice it in small ways. You're the one checking the tone of your messages before sending them. You're the one sensing when something is off before it's said. You're the one who knows when to push, when to wait, when to soften. And you tell yourself this is just what being emotionally intelligent looks like. But slowly, that intelligence turns into labor, invisible labor. You start doing emotional math in your head. Is this a good time? Am I asking too much? Should I bring this up now or later? And the relationship becomes a place where you're constantly calculating instead of inhabiting. Here's a question that usually lands like a small shock. When was the last time you felt fully relaxed being yourself in this relationship? Not loved, not wanted, just relaxed. No monitoring, no self-editing, no inner negotiations. Because imbalance doesn't make you miserable right away, it makes you vigilant. Your nervous system stays slightly alert, like it's waiting for instructions. You're present, but you're not resting. And the longer that goes on, the more tired you become without knowing why. At some point, you might notice that you feel more like yourself when you're alone. Not because the relationship is bad, but because you're no longer compensating. Your body exhales, your thoughts slow down. And this is where people get stuck. They think, if nothing is wrong, why do I feel this way? So they turn the question inward. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe this is just what relationships feel like. And slowly, self-doubt replaces clarity. Let's talk about the emotional signals because this is important. Irritation is often the first one. Not rage, just low-level annoyance that doesn't quite match the situation. That's usually your system noticing uneven effort. You're adjusting more than you're being met. Then comes hurt, quiet hurt, the kind that doesn't explode. It just settles. Hurt is often a sign that a boundary has already been crossed. Not dramatically, but repeatedly. Not by force, but by habit. And you didn't stop it because stopping it felt uncomfortable. Anger, when it shows up, tends to surprise people. It comes out sideways. You snap at something small. You feel disproportionate. That's not immaturity. That's delayed self-protection. Anger is what happens when your system finally demands acknowledgement. Here's something important, and I want you to listen closely. Very often, the person who feels imbalance first is not weaker, they're more attuned. They notice shifts, they sense distance early, and instead of stepping back, they lean in. They stabilize, they adapt, and that's how imbalance gets locked in. Because here's the paradox. The more you compensate, the more stable the relationship feels, but only for the other person. You become the regulator, the emotional shock absorber, the one who smooths things out before they turn into problems. And at first, that feels good. You feel needed, you feel important, you feel like the safe one, the understanding one, the emotionally mature one. But over time, being needed replaces being met, and that's when something starts to ache. Imbalance often feels intimate, deep, meaningful, because effort feels like closeness when that's what you learned growing up. If love once required attunement, anticipation, emotional work, then calm reciprocity can feel strangely empty. So your system confuses intensity with connection. You feel closest when you're trying. When things are easy, you feel oddly distant. And without realizing it, you help maintain imbalance because it feels familiar. And it explains why balanced relationships can initially feel boring, awkward, or emotionally flat to people who are used to earning closeness. Visually, imbalance often looks like standing on tiptoes emotionally. Just a little, but all the time. You're not straining, you're just never fully grounded. And when your legs start to shake, you think something is wrong with you, not the position you've been holding. Another image people recognize instantly is orbiting. One person stays centered in their life. The other moves around them, adjusting schedules, moods, expectations. Gravity feels natural to the one standing still, but exhausting to the one circling. And the quietest sign of all is this. You start translating yourself. You offer the simpler version of your thoughts, the easier version of your feelings. Not because they ask you to, but because you've learned which parts land and which don't. Usually it's a few things. 1. You recover from conflict faster than they do, because unresolved tension costs you more. 2. You're better at making things okay, so it becomes expected. 3. Your needs feel negotiable, while theirs feel fixed. None of this makes either person bad, but it does make the relationship asymmetrical. One person adjusts, the other remains. Here's the gentle truth. Balance doesn't return through confrontation or ultimatums. It returns through stillness, through stopping the automatic compensation, through letting silence exist, through not rushing to repair discomfort that isn't actually yours to fix. And that moment can feel terrifying. Because when you stop leaning, you don't immediately know if the other person will step forward. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But either way, confusion lifts. And clarity, even when it hurts, is kinder than constant self-erasure. It's about noticing where you've been carrying more than your share, and gently setting it down. If you recognized yourself in this video, nothing is wrong with you. You're responsive, you're perceptive, you feel deeply. That only becomes painful when it's not met with reciprocity. Balance begins the moment you come back to your own center. Not by pulling away, but by standing still. By letting your internal signals have volume again. By trusting that real connection can hold your full weight, not just your careful version. I hope this helped you name something you've been living inside without language. And next, we'll talk about what happens when balance starts to return, and why that phase can feel even scarier than imbalance at first. If this resonated, please like, comment, or stay around Human Manual.